Karnu van Heerden, welcome at the SAT Studios. Today our topic is obviously going to be quite a controversial one because everybody's got a worldview. Welcome to the SAT Studios.
Rudolph, thank you so much. Yes, and I'm glad you mentioned controversy. I traffic in controversy, so I feel right at home.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, let's start off and just James Sire wrote a book, Everybody Has a Worldview. And he says that a worldview is all-encompassing and it's all inescapable. So let's start with the bare bones. What is a worldview?
Well, a worldview is how you view the world. I think we're done. We can go now. No, but actually there is some truth in that statement. It's just like that's on a superficial level. But going in deeper, it's if we ask what is a worldview, it is basically a summary of how we sort of describe what reality is like. That's why someone like Sire says you can't get away from it, because it's encompassing aspects of reality itself. It's sort of an umbrella term that can have underlying questions aimed at things like metaphysics, epistemology, like how do you know that you know, ethics, what is your view of life after death, even if there is such a thing, and stuff like that. So it is a nice umbrella term to sort of focus on how do we see individual aspects of reality, but also how do those aspects of reality all come together in one big cohesive view of reality. Yes.
There seems to be a perception today, and the rhetoric is often used, that we should be inclusive but also accepting of other people's worldviews. Can we as Christians be accepting of all worldviews, and can we be all inclusive?
Yeah, well, it's
a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah, no, please. And I think it's important that we define the accepting and the inclusive. We need to distinguish it and define it clearly. Because if you mean by acceptance, meaning that I'm a Christian, I have a Christian worldview, but there is a friend of mine, he might hold to a naturalistic worldview. If acceptance is that I give him the freedom to air his worldview, to give his worldview, his views on his worldview, to make his case and even critique my worldview, if that means by acceptance that open for dialogue, that's basically what tolerance, the classical definition of tolerance is, then yes, we should be accepting. But if accepting means that I should accept his worldview as equally true as mine, I cannot do that. Yeah. And I think not just because of my own convictions or anything, that's just how reality works. That's the first principles of logic, the law of non-contradiction. He believes that there is no God. I believe that there is. Two fundamentally mutually exclusive truth claims. They cannot be true at the same time in the same sense.
Yeah. How do I determine which worldview is right or wrong?
Oh yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, because the thing is, this is something that I want to share as well with when people talk about worldviews. There's many times a danger in sort of like worldview thinking. People talk about the glasses analogy, and they say, no, it's like a rose-tinted glasses. You put it on, you see the world. But my other friend who might be like a Buddhist, he has like green-tinted glasses and he sees the world through that. Now that's a very useful way of explaining to people what that means. But the thing is, that analogy falls into perspectivalism.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that actually means you cannot evaluate people's worldviews because we wear different glasses. But to tweak the analogy a bit, you ask what are glasses and what are glasses for? You can't see, so you go to the eye doctor, they give you a pair of glasses and they help you to see better. They help you to see reality better. Or another analogy that I like to use with the students when we teach worldview is that think about like a map. How is a map drawn up in the first place? You need to know reality, what the external world is like before you draw up that map. And when you give that map out to people, it should accurately reflect reality and get them to their destination. That's how we know a good map, say if I'm from the Lowveld and from White River in Mpumalanga, and I'm currently living and studying and working in Potchefstroom. So a good map is one that would lead me from White River to Potchefstroom. I follow that road, it gets me to my destination.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a good map, because that reflects reality.
Yeah, for sure.
But if I read that map and I'm driving and all of a sudden I see ocean, something horribly has gone wrong.
Yeah,
Potchefstroom is not even close to the ocean. I'm like, yeah, that's a bad map. This map has taken me all the way to Neisner. You know, it's a nice area. I can have a good holiday there. But the thing is, I've lost my way. And so that's, in a way, how we evaluate worldviews. We need to see if whether they're good or bad worldviews is how they map onto reality.
Yeah, for sure.
So there are some fundamental questions we can ask when we're evaluating worldviews. Firstly, does it have empirical adequacy? This is basically just asking, is it true? And when we ask, is it true, does it correspond to reality? Is it mapping onto reality? It's going to take me where I'm going to go. Are they, and you can have various different arguments to support the truth, from history to science and any aspect of reality. But the thing is, fundamentally, that worldview needs to reflect how the way things really are.
Yeah, for sure.
Second is, does it make sense? Does it have logical consistency? Because many worldviews, and some of them openly embrace contradiction. But a worldview that is not internally consistent and contradictory, it won't make sense in the end. And so, yeah, that's a second way of evaluating it. And lastly, you can ask, and this is more of on a subjective level, but it's still important because it's a fundamental level of human nature. Does it have experiential value? Can it answer the difficult questions that we as human beings face in this life? Like, for example, the problem of evil.
Yeah, for sure.
That's a big one.
Yeah, that's huge.
And a good worldview will give a satisfying answer to that. If there's a worldview that says, well, it's just an illusion, it's in your mind, or it even doesn't even exist, go tell that to people who are suffering.
Yeah,
but let's see if that worldview is going to stick.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's sort of like a summary, but those are some main points in which we can start to drill down and see if this worldview is true, if it's logically valid, and it's actually relevant. It has the guts to stand up to reality.
Well, speaking of Christianity, in the last few years, it seems like the accusation against Christianity is that Christianity in and of itself is not logically coherent, and it's an inept worldview. It's just simple supernaturalist bias. What is the place of objectivity in a Christian worldview?
Oh, I would say it's fundamental. The thing is, because, and unfortunately the way you describe it, it's unfortunately a view of Christianity and a view of faith and everything that we believe. It's not just perpetuated in the secular world, it is infiltrated in the church. Many people in the church, for example, talk about like faith, and it's sort of feeling like some blind leap in the darkness, or some experience, and it doesn't distinguish us then from other religions which have the same measuring of truth, and it's subjective. Then you can't know if it's true or not. That's just your experience, as the postmodernist would go. But objectivity in Christianity is paramount, because the thing is, Christianity is a historical religion. It makes claims about reality. And if those things didn't really happen, well, it doesn't matter how, it's the theological message, but I feel good, but it improved my life. That doesn't matter at all. If it's not true, if it didn't really happen, regardless if you believe it or not, if you had a good experience or not, or if the majority of the world believed it or not, that doesn't matter. It's whether it happened or whether it didn't happen. And Paul makes that clear in 1 Corinthians 15 when he speaks about Jesus' resurrection. He says, if Christ has not been raised from the dead, your faith is in vain. No matter how you want to believe it, it's not going to just become true because you want it to be true. Jesus, in Christianity, stands and falls on the reality of Jesus Christ's resurrection. His resurrection is as real as we are having this conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
That is truth. It has reality, it has being. That's what it should be. Otherwise, Christianity is false.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, does truth exist?
No. Yes, of course. Yeah. I think, again, when we talk about reality and we define truth as correspondence to reality, you can't get away from truth. There are people, for example, they would say, well, truth doesn't exist. Is that true?
Yeah, is that true?
You can't even say anything of anything else. You can't make predications, as you would say in logic. without the concept of truth, it's impossible. And so many people then realize, okay, we can't get away from truth, but what is truth? Maybe truth is just that which works. That's a pragmatic view of truth, or that which is coherent. It makes sense. And then we talk about the correspondence theory of truth. But if I look at those different theories of truth, I would say the pragmatic and the coherent actually presuppose the correspondent.
Yeah, for sure.
But if you ask someone, it's like, why does it even work in the first place? With respect to what? Because you have object A, B put together. It's like, you didn't determine object A and B were there in the first place by the pragmatic view of truth. The object A and B exist in reality. So there seems to be something above the pragmatism.
Yeah,
also, coherence. With respect to what? And it's like, no, but I'm speaking about this worldview, it makes sense and stuff. Okay, but is it true? You know, we read many works of fiction, they're very coherent. They have good stories and you learn a lot, but we won't all of a sudden say, you know, unicorns or something literally exist. You know? And so when people also speak about coherency, it might make a lot of sense, but it might not necessarily even be true. We see that with many scientific hypotheses as well. You know, this theory and hypothesis makes sense. We would maybe expect this phenomena to happen, so and so, but we won't know it until we test it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What would you say to somebody that will say, well, when we're in Africa and China, we might have a very difference in the way in which we determine our perception, and we are just a product of our environments. We've got different truths.
Oh, wow, yes, yeah. Well, the thing is, to a certain extent, I will acknowledge, yes, where you grow up, it definitely has an impact on you. That's how your beliefs are shaped and stuff like that. But that doesn't mean you have your own truth.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we need to be careful about committing, that's the genetic fallacy. For example, it's a famous objection by some atheists to say, you're only a Christian because you lived in a Christian household. Your environment formed you.
Yeah, for
you
sure.
couldn't help it. And it's like, no, well, that doesn't have any bearing with whether Christianity is true or not. That's just describing where I got my beliefs from, but where I got it from doesn't mean whether it's true or not. I need to do that on an independent sort of study and analysis of Christianity as an idea and of itself. So just because different cultures and just different geography and stuff, and we develop we receive ideas from our culture or upbringing stuff, it doesn't mean those things are true or even false. That's why we need to evaluate them. That's why we need to learn how to think, because it's a dangerous thing just to pick up worldviews and ideas without evaluating them. You know, you could say, well, that group that live there, they have this particular belief, you know, that we should, you know, just when the babies come out there a bit deformed, just kill them all. Yeah, and it's like, well, it's their view, we can't judge them, it's in their culture. And it's like, oh, really now? You know, it's like when you start to press people on certain sort of these questions, it will become quite apparent, you know, that the line of judgment will stretch across various cultures.
Yeah,
I mean, like, for example, the whole thing that happened with the Nazis in the Nuremberg trials. They made it lawful in their own country that, well, we can do this to the Jews. They couldn't be tried according to French law. They weren't French citizens, or Russian, or Americans, or the Brits. They weren't citizens of this country. It's like, what are we supposed to do? It's like, well, these are crimes against humanity. And I'm going to ask, what the heck is humanity? There seems to be something objective and universal that stretches across all of humanity, that all human beings are subservient to and can be judged by.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe I should throw this in, but there's a common understanding these days. It's called intersectionality, that certain cultural groups cannot escape their own cultural conformity and bias. Isn't that sort of a flavor of this very perspective that I've just spoke of, that certain individuals are just a product of their environment? You know, isn't it very similar to that?
Yeah, I would say there's some similarities, yeah. And it's very ironic that I would see people usually saying that, especially with the particular philosophy, they come from, they would say, no, we can't judge these cultures and stuff like that. But the moment someone
Does it to
in
them.
there, does it to them, it's like,
Yeah.
no, I've come to this conclusion independently. Or if you have a viewpoint that vehemently disagrees with them, it's like if you have something that's a bit more conservative, or you have a suggestion on this belief or that belief, no, you're so backwards and bigoted and stuff. It's like, no, but this culture over there, no, we can't judge them. But you're this, no, you're wrong. Yeah. It's like there's a massive inconsistency how that happens. Because the thing is, if you truly apply that consistently, across all levels of reality, we can't make judgments about anything then. But that's impossible. We make judgments about things every day, from the smallest of things to the biggest of things.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Does it matter what we believe?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, what you believe and what you have in your worldview, it will affect everything.
Yeah, for sure.
Because again, it's the comprehensive mapping out of reality. Like with the map, if you have that bad map, at best, a good map will get you where you want to go. But if you have a bad map, you're gonna get lost. But sometimes the map can be drawn maliciously to purposefully take you to a place which is very dangerous, where people are waiting for you in ambush, and it's going to have a obvious effect on you. The thing is, your worldview, what you believe, affects everything you do. And on an individual level, it might lead people just to destroy their lives. If they believe that, well, my personal life doesn't mean anything, pleasure is of the highest order, and now we see society breaks down.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's just on the individual level. I would say also looking at large scale, how beliefs have an effect on our everyday lives. I just asked people who have lived in communist countries.
Yeah, for sure.
Millions and millions and millions
Are people
of people were slaughtered because of an idea. And that's why we need to pay attention to that famous adage. Ideas have consequences. You need to think about what you believe, why you believe it, and the effect that it has on you, your immediate society, or and your country and globally. Because if you think you have just the privilege, I'll just believe it. It's just for me. I'm not hurting anyone, or stuff. You might think that, but as that idea starts to spread through society, it will have grave consequences.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, the interesting thing though is this weekend I was at a wedding, and one of the individuals that were there, he was an agnostic. And the sad reality is that he immediately said to me, the one thing that puts him off Christianity is that it seems that it proclaims itself as a superior worldview. And there is a form of, for lack of a better word, an eclecticism amongst Christians where they see themselves as better. And I said to him, and maybe you can answer him the way you would have, but I said, we're not better, we're better off, because of what Jesus has done. But how do we speak to people when we speak to them and we say, okay, it matters what you believe, but what I believe is actually superior. How do we do that sensitively? And how do we do it in such a way that it's not condescending?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, I would say the thing is, again, we just go back to the question of truth. Yeah. Because yes, unfortunately, even people who have the truth, they can fail morally by being arrogant about it. And if you know anything about the truth of Christianity and about the teachings of Jesus, humility is a fruit of the Spirit. Yeah. So you shouldn't be arrogant. The thing is, you should be humble that you've received the truth, and you should be concerned about other people that don't share the truth. But I would ask him, it's like, if you knew I believed something that was bad for me and I practiced it, and you really cared about me, wouldn't it be the act of love to try and convince me otherwise? Sure. And I think many people would be hard pressed to say no. They would say, yes, I would try and convince you away from that. It's like, well, how is that any different from what's going on here? Because the thing is, we're talking about truth claims here, how reality is like.
Yeah, for sure.
And what you believe and I believe, it's mutually exclusive. And everything is on the line here.
Yeah, for sure.
And so it will change everything. Don't you think that's an important conversation to have? And I'm not doing it to say I'm better than you or you're inferior. It's in fact because I see you as a being made in God's image and someone that I want to lead to the truth. I want to stand with you as a truth seeker. I want you to come with me. I don't want us to shout one another down and stuff. I want you to come as a truth seeker. Come with me. Let's walk this road. I'm willing to put all my cards on the table with what I believe. Are you willing to do the same? And let's look at it. Let's evaluate it fairly and equally. And then you will understand why. If I constantly say, if it annoys you, you keep saying Christianity is true, what you believe is true. You say, well, yeah, I'm convicted that it is. But grant me, please, the opportunity to tell you why.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's be fair. And you do the same. And you can go ahead, critique me, tell me that I'm wrong. Please, I'm begging you, tell me that I'm wrong. I remember a conversation that I had with Muslims on campus. And they were very politically correct. They didn't want to tell me that I'm wrong. And I knew if Islam and Christianity, it's mutually exclusive. They're contradictory.
Yeah.
And I just told the guy, look, okay, let's don't beat around in the bush anymore. We know what we believe. It's not the same. But it's fine. It's okay. I want you to disagree with me. Please disagree with me. It doesn't mean you hate me. In fact, you just use that analogy. If you knew what I was believing is false, it's an act of love to lead me to the truth.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's extend that service to one another. Let's love one another by putting our cards on the table, having the conversation. Please. Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question, and it's a bit of a loaded question, but this agnostic asked me the same question, and I'm not going to tell you what he said. I'll give you his response after you've answered. But can we be good without God?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. And like one of the previous questions, can we be good without God? We need to sort of analyze, pull it out a bit. As like in an epistemological sense, if you say, can we know good without God? It's like, can I know what goodness is without believing in God? Well, of course, I think you can. I mean, Jesus says that himself in his Sermon on the Mount. He says, you who are wicked know how to give good gifts to your children.
Yeah, for sure.
And there are many instances in Scripture where people who are not Christians or part of God's people that come to good conclusions and can understand what good and bad is. I mean, when Paul is with Barnabas in Lystra in Acts chapter 14, they do miracles and the people want to sacrifice. Hey, Zeus and Hermes are here, we need to sacrifice, do this whole thing. It's like, whoa, stop. We are of men of like nature as you are. And so he's appealing to that. They know what a human being is.
Yeah, for sure.
They know that, and so we are not the divine. We are just human beings like you are. So yes, unbelievers can know the good, yes, without believing in God. But then that's the epistemological.
And let me just pause there. That was exactly his argument when he spoke to me. And then you can go, don't lose your train
Please,
of thought.
please.
He said, then why is Christianity necessary? So that's where he stopped. So anyway, now I'm going to...
No, please, no, that's good. Because after he said that, because we dealt with the moral epistemology now. But now we're going to drill down to the moral ontology. Where are the foundations?
For your morality.
You're building this on.
Good.
Because I know you can recognize goodness, but I'm going to ask you why. Because in Christianity, I can tell you why even you as an unbeliever recognize goodness. But, you know, if you hold to a skeptic, even if for example, if you're like a moral skeptic, it's like, how can you, I know when someone steals your wallet, you feel like, that's not good, because you recognize the moral fabric of the universe. Sure. But I'm going to ask you, how's your moral skepticism gelling with that moral reality? Because it seems your ontology is incompatible with your skepticism. You've taken away the foundations.
Yeah, for sure.
And so we need the ultimate foundation is required to build our moral and ethical theory. It's like, for example, I enjoy it so much. Thomas Aquinas had a brilliant sort of thing how he talks about morality. He says, he talks about first principles, self-evident, you know, like the laws of logic. But he says the first principles of theoretical reason are like the laws of logic, but he says there's a first principle of practical reasoning. He says that good is to be pursued and evil avoided. That's it. And I'm like, at first I read it and I'm like, is that all? It's like you write these thick books, Thomas, and that's the thing. But then I started to understand what he was saying. Everyone does that. Every single person, no matter what your ethical belief is, will seek good and avoid evil. The real debate comes in. What do you define as good and evil? That's the moral ontology. And that's where the discussion comes in. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So how would you answer somebody that says that, Christianity is so exclusive, it's morally unattainable?
Well, I would ask, how is exclusivism linked with the moral unattainability? Look, it's like if I
let me give the pastoral question. Pastor, I can't walk this faith life anymore. I'm not good enough.
Okay, well, yeah, that's the whole point. That's why you need Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's the whole thing that makes Christianity different, because it's the acknowledgement of the failure of the human condition to reach out to God and the divine. That's why the divine God needs to come down to us. Jesus being incarnated, he has his hand, as God, there his hand on humanity as fully man. There, he's the bridge and the mediator then, yeah. And the thing is, if we just talking about the exclusivity, it's like, look, any belief is exclusive to some extent. If you get married, for example, you're making an exclusive. Well, with these days how they redefine marriage, that's gonna
sketchy.
But usually you start making exclusions.
Yeah, for sure.
And and if you just, again, this whole discussion we're having is coming back to the fundamental question of truth. Because if you just look at what Christianity stands for and you compare it to any other belief system, it cannot be true at the same time. That's just how it is. You can't get past that. And that's okay. But the thing is, that means you're going to have to go do your homework. Yeah.
And it seems like the general perception is that all religions are equally true, but that is simply not true, because the moment you weigh up what they believe, they all contradict each other, so they cannot be equally true. What makes Jesus and Christianity so very different, and why did you buy into it as a worldview?
Yes. Well, yeah.
Huge question, sorry.
Yeah, no, please. I would say with Christianity, when I grew up, and especially when I went to university, I had a lot of questions. Even after I became a Christian, I still had a lot of questions. There was sometimes I felt, was I actually a Christian? I don't know. It feels a bit wonky. Because I just I don't see how things gel together. But it's when I started pursuing these questions, it's like, look, I can live in this fear thinking, is Christianity true or not? Or I can just okay, let me just put it to the test and see if it's actually going to stick. Because there were other things that I found attractive. Other worldviews. Oh, that's interesting. That seems to make sense. It's very pragmatic. But the thing is, well, I can't just postulate the whole time. I need to test it. And so how I started going about, I think it's, well, firstly, especially when I met Simon and Nell at Horatio Christi in 2016, that's when I started to drill down deep to see, okay, what is in, just open this box, what's actually in this box of Christianity? It's like, how is it going to, stand the test, Because a good worldview is a worldview that can stand criticism.
Yeah.
And especially when I also studied and looked at Christianity existing for thousands of years. And I'm like, well, there must be something to it if it keeps persisting for such a long time.
Yeah, I agree.
And then drilling down and to see, well, it corresponds to reality. It's actually true. I remember we sat at a coffee shop and Simon asked me, what is truth? I was like, no, but Jesus is true. I said, what does that even mean?
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, and I was just stunned there. And I'm like,
I can remember one day I rode through Danville. Okay, I might say what was on the walls, but there was this one thing written on the wall and it says, Jesus is the answer. And somebody went under that and said, what is the question?
Yes. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, and that's important. Yeah. And so, and that's, I must say, it was one of the first things that sort of hit me. And I'm like, I never thought about what truth is. Because I always took it for granted. No, but it's true. But I kind of mean it's like it's experiential to me, or it's something. And I thought, I need to think about this.
Yeah, for sure.
And it was that sort of again, that approach to truth and knowing, is it really real? That sort of drove me into it and actually cemented the whole thing about Christianity to me. And why I wouldn't say, no, I believe in Christianity. I say, I am convinced of the truth of Christianity.
Oh, that's amazing. Yeah. It's almost like when Jesus stood in front of Pilate, when he was confronted with the same question, Jesus said, "The man standing before you, that is truth."
Yeah.
And,
because it's this truth, and it's not just it's an abstract, objective. It's that, but it's not just that. Because the thing is, Christianity is true in the sense like it also answered all the other things in human experience to me. Yes. That's why I would think the initial, I didn't know it until I thought about it, but I think that's the first thing that drew me, why I became a Christian, because I was struggling so much with so many things, and I was just lost in darkness, and I was going down, I think, to maybe nihilism at some point. But when that first thing, when the gospel was preached, I heard the message and God changed my life. It made sense in that sense, and it had that experiential value because it freed me. Yeah, for sure. And it just the world started to make sense. Why the world was messed up? Why can't we just go on? Why? And it's like, yeah, because it's sinful. This is where it all came from. We need Christ, and we can be saved. That's the first thing. And going after that, and everything I just discussed, and going into the question of truth, the puzzle pieces just came together in a holistic vision of truth. That truth will speak not just to the facts, but to your experiences. Within yourself, to other people, what the world is like. Yeah,
for sure. Well, thank you so much. This was greatly encouraging, and I wanted to ask you if the students or if anybody else wants to speak with you, or if they need any more information about your ministry and what you do, where can they contact you?
Yes, please.
Not your cell phone number.
Yeah, please. We can, if you want to know more about what I'm involved with Ratio Christi. You can go to ratiochristi.co.za. We also have a YouTube channel, Ratio Christi South Africa, so you can just type that in. Please like and subscribe, click the bell. But no, please, it really helps us to spread the message. The Lord has blessed us with that. So there's a lot of resources, like a lot of stuff you can go and look at. And we have playlists that link to other ministries and their work. So yeah, the resources, there's a lot. And so like on the Ratio Christi website itself, we have a place. If you really want to send us a message, we have a function there. Please type in, send us a message, and go look at our articles. For example, with this thing about Worldview, I myself wrote, and a friend of mine wrote an article. Two articles, on Worldviews on our website. So please, go ahead and
digest it and read it.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, and I pray that you'll be back with us in the future.
Definitely, I hope so too. Thank you, Rudolph.
My pleasure.